Hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel. Also, if you're new here, I post new videos every Wednesday, and today is my review discussion thing of the Crimes of Grindelwald. So this is the third video in my Harry Potter-thon, so if you haven't seen that yet, I'll leave a link here and in the description below. But yeah, so before we get started, I just want to put it out there that I am more of a character-driven story person instead of a plot-driven story person. But ideally, you'd want to have something, or I'd want to have something that is a balance between the two. And I do think that the first Fantastic Beasts movie did this pretty damn well. But unfortunately, I can't say that I think the same of the Crimes of Grindelwald. So I just want to say that this video will be divided into two sections. So it will be a non-spoilery review thought thing, and then I will get into the spoilers and what I didn't like about it, because unfortunately I have to spoil to be specific enough about what I didn't like. And I kind of just want to say where I think it all went wrong and where they probably could have improved it. So before we start, I do want to say that I have notes, but I am gonna go off script sometimes because I have a lot to say about this. So if there's something new that occurs to me as I'm going by the script, I'm gonna add that in. So this is going to be a bit more unfiltered and a bit more all over the place. I do apologize for that, but yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this. Harry Potter is something that, as you can probably tell from the fact that I am having a Potter-thon, it's something that's very close to my heart. So I was disappointed, to say the least. I'm making it sound a lot worse than it actually is. I didn't think the movie was bad. I just think compared to the first movie, it lacked a lot and it was very compressed. I don't know how else to put it. It was very quick and too fast paced, not in a unstructured manner. So yeah, we're gonna get into that, but first let's focus on the non-spoiler section. So as I said already, this movie is very plot driven. So if you are a plot over character kind of person, or you weren't as attached to the characters in the first movie, so the less focus on them in the second movie won't bother you, then I do think you will enjoy this. I found the CGI to be absolutely breathtaking, and I did really enjoy the fact that they kept on expanding on the magical lore and universe, as well as going back to some of the things that you do know already. So they do visit Hogwarts. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, and yeah, that part was amazing. I don't know, I love magic so much. It just brings back that warm fuzzy feeling that I had as a child. So that part for me was brilliant, and I do think there are a lot of things to enjoy in this movie. I just think there could have been so much more. But I really liked Dumbledore's reappearance. I did actually like the actor for him. I think he did a good job, and as I said, I really do think the plot was a good thing. I think it did a good job of setting up all the things for the next movie, even if I do think it was a bit rushed, and I would have preferred it to be stretched over 2 movies instead of just 1 or maybe even 3 movies. We'll get to that later. But yeah, I do think it did a good job plot-wise, and I think they did an amazing job with Grindelwald. I really did appreciate him as a character. I think it was, in his character arc, so much better than the first movie. So yeah, that was definitely a plus for me. But that being said, I don't think it held up where the other characters are concerned. So if you are watching this for the characters like I am, then you might be disappointed. Okay, and with those few words, that's the end of the spoiler-free section. I'm sorry, that is all I have to say about this that won't contain spoilers, so feel free to stop here. And if you are not too bothered about spoilers, or you came back after watching it, thank you. And now, to sum up my thoughts on this movie as a whole, I just feel like they were like, okay, you're here now, so now that you're like hooked, now we can just do whatever and it's gonna be fine. So yeah. Okay, so for me, a lot of the problems really stood out in the twists. Now I know that sounds very strange, but it more stood out for me because of the way I reacted to all the twists and the fact that I basically didn't really care. So I just feel like that shows a flaw in the development of the characters, because they didn't really make me care for Credence and his journey to find his mother, his resolve about it. They didn't make me care about Credence at all, which is shocking because I really felt for him in the first movie. So the fact that they couldn't carry this throughout the rest of the second movie for me was very alarming. And when it came time for the big reveal, the big finale, I almost couldn't care less. I was just like, okay, cool. So yeah, I just, it's so frustrating because, you know, I mean, I do think it's a cool ending. I think it's going to be very interesting for the following movies, and I am going to go see those. And maybe seeing those will make me like this one more, but as of right now, it boggles my mind because they had the potential to make this really big. I mean, if you had been with Credence through every step of his journey and you'd really felt his torments and you'd really kind of wanted him to be able to find his mother, because they'd kind of set it up in the first one that he's a grey area. He kind of wants to go with Grindlewald, but Grindlewald betrayed him, so he kind of wants to go for the one person who stood up for him when his mother hit him, you know, with Tina. So you have him divided at this moment, and the fact that they just don't deliver with this grey area that the audience has for him, like the fact that we could still very well feel a lot of compassion for him, is just so extremely frustrating because it feels like a missed opportunity. But then on the other hand, I really do have to commend them for the way that they handled Grindelwald. I think they did an amazing job of showing in even the first seconds and minutes of the movie just how convinced he is of his goal in life. Like, it just shows how far he's willing to go to get what he wants to get. He is willing to kill everything and everyone. He is willing to exterminate anything that gets in his way, and I think that really brought him up in terms of the threat that he presents for our main characters. And that is important for me because, spoiler warning I suppose, but it's pretty clear because we know the history. Grindelwald dies. So with that already being said, the only thing that J.K. Rowling can do is make us fear for how much our main characters will lose before he dies. And I think with the way they've set him up in this movie, they've done it extremely successfully, because I really do fear for how much our main characters will lose before he dies. I am terrified of all the casualties that will happen before his reign of terror stops. I do think, however, that if they had put a little more time into the main characters and making us feel for the main characters, then all that I've just mentioned would have been that much more effective. Then I do feel like I need to mention this, but I was extremely reluctant when it came to the fact that Johnny Depp had been revealed as the actual actor for Grindelwald, and I have to say I was happy with the performance that he gave. I was at first very afraid that he would make Grindelwald too quirky and playful in his like evilness, and that would then undermine how much of a threat I saw him as. But the way that he played him actually wasn't very playful at all, and I do think that it was a very good performance. Then moving on to Queenie and her twist. So I'm sure most people saw it coming from a mile away. I certainly did, but besides frustration, I didn't really feel anything for her betrayal. I mean, I felt something for her as the character that I knew and grew to love in the first movie, but as of this movie, there wasn't any new connection that I formed with her, and it was so frustrating because I think the idea of having like one of our side join the dark side was a really fantastic idea, and especially because she's a Leetlemans or however you pronounce that. So, you know, it poses a really interesting question of if Newt and Jacob and Tina were ever to encounter her during one of the battles, you know, she might figure out a plan that they have because she can see into their minds. So it really does pose a very interesting question, and I think it raises the stakes very well. But I'm so frustrated with the way they handled it, because I just wish they'd shown a bit more of Jacob and Queenie's relationship and the struggles that they're facing as a muggle and wizard pair, or witch pair that is not allowed to love each other. And I just feel like if they'd focused a bit more on that, then I would have really felt for Queenie and for the pain she's going through and the desperation that she feels because she just wants to be with the person that she loves. And the fact that I didn't feel that is what really makes me so mad, because there was potential there. They had it in the first movie, so I just wish they'd carried it over instead of just slapping that on in the, you know, at the beginning of the movie and then carrying on as if that's supposed to carry us for the entirety of it. So if the betrayal had been worked towards throughout the movie and they just cut the part where she meets Grindelwald and decides to defect, like at the end, cut it in like really shortly, if the built-up frustration she felt throughout the entire movie had been enough, then we would have understood it. We might not have liked it, but we would have understood it a lot more, and we would have felt for it, and we would have just been, well, I would have just been so much more immersed in it. So it's such a missed opportunity, and you see they had the right idea, but the execution was just lacking. Then I just want to mention something that one of my friends pointed out and that I really agree with, and that is the fact that Queenie was convinced to join Grindelwald's side because of what she saw in his mind and not because of what he said, unlike the rest of the people that, you know, were shown to be on his side. And I do think that is a very good way to demonstrate just how much Grindelwald truly believes in what he is offering the Wizarding World, and it sends a really strong message about his convictions. Okay, then we move on to Tina and like her as a character. For the most part, I didn't have too much of a problem with. I think it was great that she was out there once again doing her thing, like being an aura, enjoying her life, whatever. But then you look at the fact that Newt and Jacob didn't even think to mention to her or ask her about where Queenie is, why she wasn't with Queenie when Queenie specifically went to see her. And you also kind of just wonder, why didn't they show her reaction when Queenie betrayed them? I mean, they lingered on Jacob for a decent amount of time, but let's not forget, Queenie's her sister. She was just betrayed by her sister and they didn't even get a shot of that. What? Like, that really did a large amount of damage to me about the bond that you see between them. Like, why the hell didn't they, show her being sad about her sister? This is a massive thing. They literally say in the first movie, we are all each other has. So why did they suddenly not care about each other anymore? Like, what? And yeah, that was just extremely frustrating for me. I think it was a massive mistake. And I also genuinely think splitting up the group so early on in the series, let alone the film, was a bad decision. Then we have Jacob, and compared to the rest of the main characters, he was handled pretty fairly. I still enjoyed him, I still love him. I enjoy the humor that he always brings to the table. But once again, though I did feel for him, if they'd just spent a bit more time focusing on Queenie and his relationship and the struggles they're facing, I would have felt so much more. And it just frustrates me that for all intents and purposes we see about 2 minutes of screen time with the two of them, and that's supposed to carry us through the entire movie after they separate for us to feel the pain, So yeah, that was a massive disservice that they did. But I do think that with all the characters, he was the best handled and brought out the most emotion in me for the main characters. Now I'm going to put this out there. I personally think that they made a mistake focusing so much on the side characters. I think that it would have been a lot better if they had focused on the side characters in relation to the main characters. And I know that sounds strange, but let me point you to the Weasleys and I'll explain what I mean. So before I start, I just want to give a spoiler warning for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Mute now if you haven't watched it yet. I'll put a thingy here until I am finished with the spoilers. So yeah, as we all know, Fred dies in the end, and though it is absolutely heart-wrenching for me to have watched that, I cried so much. I was truly torn up, and it's one of the few things that when I talk about it now, I still get teary-eyed. But I wasn't just mourning Fred, I was feeling sorry for Miss Weasley and Arthur and all of the siblings who had lost their brother, and I was especially gutted for George and the fact that he was basically losing the other half of himself. It was made very clear that they are two peas in a pod. They do everything together, they complete each other in a way that is just almost unimaginable. And yeah, so that was part of my sorrow. It wasn't just Fred and his death, it was the sorrow I felt for the people who loved him and cared for him and who had had him in their life for so long. So I feel like with that as an example, it is just a smarter idea to have you care not so much for the characters themselves, but for how much it impacts the characters that you already know. So how much the loss of Leda meant to Newt. Or if you wanted to change it up a bit, then have Newt and his brother really develop a bond, and then when Leda dies, it's not Leda you feel sorry for, it's his brother who just lost his fiancée and the pain that his brother's going through, especially if you'd gone as far as to establish his brother as someone who is really emotionally resilient, unlike Newt, who is smart but distant. And then when you see his loss of Leda, then it really just hits you. So I think there were other ways to approach it that would have been a lot more effective, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, no, but you know, it was just porn, she was just like meant to be quick and done. But the amount of time that you spent with her and her history kind of contradicts that. It makes it feel as if she was meant to be very important and stand out to the audience, and then, you know, you have the ending and you just feel nothing, or I felt nothing. So it's just, I feel like there would have been better ways to handle it, and maybe just have her hint that she was hiding something, and then by doing that create intrigue, because there lacked intrigue, there lacked emotion, and it was just generally not interesting, that part, for me. So I just feel like no matter which way you look at it, they kind of failed. So there were just so many ways that they could have handled it differently to have a better outcome. Then we get to Dumbledore, and I absolutely loved him. I think they did a great job. I did call most of the plot line for Dumbledore and Grindelwald like well in advance, but I didn't really mind that, seeing as I don't think that takes away from the importance of the information that we were given. And I really like the fact that we saw a reappearance of the Mirror of Eridus, and that they kind of used it as a bit of an exposition device, though I don't quite know how what he saw in there relates to a desire that he has, but still, maybe that's something that will be explained later on, and I'm not going to be too bothered about that. I also really like the way that the author portrayed him. So the fact for me is that Dumbledore kind of has two sides to him. He is the caring, loving father figure, and then he's also a bit of a master manipulator. And I know that sounds very bad, but he is very focused on doing things for the greater good, and sometimes he just doesn't care what, you know, who has to be sacrificed for that to happen. And I really think that they did a good job of kind of portraying that in the way that he nudges Newt to do what he wants him to do without being too outright about it. So yeah, I do think this was a very good portrayal for him, and I think that what was revealed in the end is also going to be extremely interesting to see him handle in the future. So then I just want to address the upcoming war. I think it was a good idea that they brought in the thing with Queenie and Grindelwald, because it really made a difference in perceiving the war as black and white. I think that if you look at Harry Potter, everything is very clear cut in terms of what's right and what's wrong, and I do think that's fine, because you're seeing things from a child's perspective, and as a child the thing between right and wrong is usually very straightforward. But because now in Fantastic Beasts we're seeing it from an adult's point of view, I do think that it is appropriate that the situation with the war be less clear and less black and white. But then, that being said, I do also think that the war storyline suffered from the way that they handled this, because they crammed way too much information into it, and because of that didn't really allow us time to connect to any of the stories that they tried to cram into this one movie. I mean, I didn't really care for Credence, I didn't really care for Nandini, I didn't even really care for our main characters, which is extremely telling. And I just feel like they wasted the opportunity to really deepen the characters and our connections with them. Because if you look at something like the Harry Potter series, you get 7 books worth of content in which to really connect to all the characters, and they also make a point to continue focusing on the main trio as the driving force for the entire series, whereas here it kind of felt like our 4 main characters got left behind. And that is extremely problematic for me, because especially because this isn't true life events, this isn't a war that actually happened. You don't have that ground of reality to connect you to the situation, so you entirely depend on the connection that you have with the characters and the fear that you have for them and their situation within the wall. And the fact that you don't connect to the characters then weakens this connection to the wall and the fear that you feel for the wall. So it just was a very bad decision in my opinion. I am kind of worried because now there's no real motivation for me to worry about this wall because I don't worry about the characters, and it just is kind of like a bad cycle. So I really hope that's something they fix in the next few movies. I just feel like this felt like either the second movie in a trilogy or the fourth movie in a 5-part series. So I don't really know where they can go from here. I feel like the war should happen in the next movie because of how rushed this one was. It just feels very, very disjointed. I can't imagine them dragging this out for any longer than one movie because of how they just packed so much into this one. So yeah, that's just, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth if I think of the potential that it had and how this kind of feels like it's wasted because I didn't care about the characters and their journey, so what's there to care about? So yeah, I wish they'd taken more time with it. I wish they plotted out the storylines a bit more. I wish they had given us a bit more time to have Credence as a grey character between, is he going to go with Grindelwald or is he going to go with our main characters? So it feels like there was a lot of wasted opportunity. But yeah, so for me, I really don't know how they're gonna keep on building the intrigue and the suspense for 3 more movies. It really feels like they kind of went from a walking to a sprinting or a flying or something ridiculous because the leap was just so big, and I don't know where they're gonna go from there. Like, it feels like they're already at the point before the climax, so I don't know how they're gonna stretch out said climax for 3 more movies. And I just feel like they lacked the intrigue in this movie. Like, it almost feels like they didn't do the emotional work that would allow the audience to feel like it would pay off in the twists and the final revelations. Like, they just kept throwing it at us without allowing there to be any glue to make it stick. So yeah, I think I should move on from this point because I think I've made myself clear. So in summary, all I'm basically trying to say is that I really did enjoy the plot and the storyline, but I just wished it had been a bit slower so that we had more time to indulge in all the different things that they told us and that they had brought up, and that I would have been more emotionally invested in all of it, because yeah, this was just too rushed. And that is the end of it. So I hope you enjoyed this or agreed with this. I don't know what this would have made you feel, but I had to put it out there. I unfortunately can't come and sit here and tell you that I liked it when it left me wanting for more in a bad way. So yeah, that's the end of it. If you did somehow enjoy this, please consider subscribing and liking so that I know I didn't just make a complete twat out of myself. And my social media links will be in the description box below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!